Welcome back to the podcast. On today's episode, we are going public. We're going public this morning. I said just a minute ago, we're going public with our privates, but we're not really going public with our privates. We're going public versus our private.
Just these guys, you know.
And I actually have no idea what we're going to be talking about.
We just pulled a topic out of a hat.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it.
Public life versus private life.
Public self versus private self.
Oh. That's different, huh?
We got Pastor Mike on the mic.
We got Dr. Parker in the house.
Running a little late there.
What a boom. It actually worked out all right. So public versus private. That's one of the things that has been really, well, I put it this way. It was challenging at the beginning to think about coming in here every week and talking on a microphone to anybody who wanted to listen and have it all recorded for all posterity.
Exactly.
And know that everything that you say is going to be, something that can be used against you in the court of law. Especially when it comes to your marriage. So,
Your Honor.
I love you, Don. Yeah, kind of the whole idea, but yeah, and it's an interesting thing, the whole public versus private when it comes to being in ministry. Not only do I do this on Tuesday mornings, but I do it pretty much every week on Sunday mornings. You get up and you share your heart and you share your thoughts with a whole lot of people. And I guess it gets to the point to where, the public and the private can really start to just kind of meld together and they blend together. And if you're not careful, you can kind of lose some of yourself in the I guess the role. When you get a smile on your face. You gave me a subject matter and I'm still trying to figure it out.
Again, you into what you're losing.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was, that is many people deal with this in many different ways. We have, the public persona that we put on for other people, the stereotype of the family that rolls up to church and
I'm tightening up. Oh my gosh.
And the suits and the hairs are combed and the mom's yelling at the kids to, act right. And when they go home, they take off the girdle and start smoking and the kids are running around like crazy. And they have this public persona and then they have a private self. And, my journey over the years going from, the Navy to academia, I got hit in the face pretty hard with who I am was not acceptable. And so I had to kind of develop a student persona. When I went in, I couldn't be talking like a sailor. I couldn't be acting like a redneck.
Sure.
In order to be accepted by the professors and for them to hear my ideas, I had to develop that sense of what a student would say, how a student would act. And that kind of rolled over into internship because I'm still getting graded essentially on internship. It's a pass fail. If you fail your internship, then, 10, 12 years of school are just now down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to impress the psychologist on the internship. And so I, wear suits and use big words when I talk. And then from there, you go to your postdocs or you're doing this again, and then you get your license. And by this time, you've got in your brain a stereotypical image of what a psychologist should look like and what the office should be like and how you should dress and how you should present. And so, I started living two lives. There was me at work as the psychologist and then me at home as myself. And so, if we went to, went to a bar, well, I had to have my radar up because what if people who I've met during the day see me out in the bar?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. And this was, huge conversation. A lot of our supervisory groups back in graduate school. I'll tell you a story. Dr. Melchert, we'll come back to that, but he's who I fall back on for answering that question, but it's something that for many years I had to deal with, the public versus private self, the work self versus me at home. And I hear people all the time saying, I can't be myself.
Sure.
And I was wondering how you dealt with that, especially because your journey to being a pastor wasn't your stereotypical route that many of them take. Yours was very different.
No, my seminary was traveling around the country selling robotic welding guns. I haven't heard that too many times.
Lord help me.
From many pastors, yeah. And so that's what taught me how to speak in public. But then back when we first started the church, we were a part of the United Methodist Conference. And so back then, I was going through what's called a course of study in order to become a Methodist pastor. And you had the Book of Discipline, and you went through this course of study. And the entire time during that process, I absolutely felt like I was having to put on a character.
Yeah.
And try to be somebody that I really just was not. I had to try to fit in. Honestly, in a group of folks that if I looked around, I would never be hanging out with these people.
So these aren't people you would choose to hang out with on a Saturday.
It's not against them. It's just that's not who I would have been hanging out with. I didn't when I was growing up. I wasn't the kid going to youth, at youth church. I wasn't the one that was, towing the line. I was the one running with the heathens.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I was voted in president. And so, I was not, this whole idea of ministry wasn't my idea.
So to feel uncomfortable.
I was completely uncomfortable. I was a fish out of water, without a doubt. But then what happened was we ended up leaving the United Methodist Conference. And then all of a sudden, I could be who I felt like God was calling me to be, and not try to be someone that I was not. Be someone that try to become a good Methodist.
Sure.
Again, nothing against Methodism or Methodists, but that's not who I was. And so, yeah, I would not have made it. I would not have made it through the first semester of the School of Discipline. That course of study would not have been something that I survived. And so...
and it wasn't the academia, it was the environment.
Yeah.
And your
probably
ability
both.
To
mesh
with, fit with.
Yeah. But I never was all that great in school. I went to college and just had an awesome time. And didn't graduate. Because of that. So, yeah.
Well, that's a completely different subject. How you sell yourself short every single day. That's just,
it drives you nuts.
Yes.
But I'm not saying I'm stupid. I'm just not real good. The classroom is not where I thrive. So that's why I've always tried to keep even my messages less of a lecture and more of a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Less of a lecture feel and more of a lab feel, where it's just more experiential.
Sure.
As much as I can. And so, yeah. So, but the whole idea of having to put on airs or put on that mask of hypocrisy. I stood up the other day and I in the message I said, "Welcome to HA, Hypocrites Anonymous." Hello, my name's Mike. And
hi, Mike.
We got to own a certain amount of reality that we're all trying to do better, but we are who we are, and we just got to keep being surrendered to who He is. And so, yeah, the whole idea of, and I also thanked the church for never putting our family in a fishbowl. That's the one thing that Dawn was so afraid of when I first presented to her the idea that I felt like God was calling me to ministry. There couldn't have been a more shocked person than her. Right next to me. She said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I think that I'm really being called to go into this." And I was volunteering. I was even on kind of a part-time role, but then the idea of quitting my job and going full time.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you got to be kidding me, because she grew up in a small town,
Sure.
Plevna, Kansas, in a church that was super small, and the pastor and his wife, the wife had the bun in her hair, and her hair in a bun, and she had the dress on, and she could play the piano. Well, that's what every pastor's wife was supposed to do. And Don was none of that.
Yeah.
And so, so thankful that the church has never placed that kind of expectation on us. And they've been really good. Dawn is she's a powerhouse behind the scenes over in the kids area. She's volunteered back there for 19 years now. And nobody knows it unless you're back there
Sure.
with your kids, or unless you're on that team.
Well, back to you.
No, I like to deflect this. This is all about Don.
What was it? Has there been a point? I don't know if this is a conversation. What was it like to have the role of pastor and then be yourself? I mean,
I've always felt really.
Were those ever two separate things?
They tend to want to kind of drift apart, and you feel like you have to at times play a certain role. Well, I mean, there are times where I'm very comfortable in the role of pastor, but I still don't. Someone will say, "Hello, pastor," and I'll say, "It's Mike." It's to this day.
Sure.
So, but during funerals, even weddings, I'll put that hat on and be completely cool with it, or that title. But most of the time, it's just me. I'm me. That's why I'm constantly, and I guess some of this is just a slow, a molasses pace development of confidence. I have just always felt like, okay, God called me to be me and to become like Him, not like someone else. And so, so I've never struggled. Like, I don't struggle to emulate another speaker. I don't struggle to emulate another pastor. I just don't. Is emulate the right word?
Yeah.
I just don't. And thank goodness, at least up to this point. I also always say that the board of directors in 2010, October of 2010, they asked me to step up when the first the founding and lead pastor moved on. They asked me to step up because they had some kind of a brain fart going on. And so in October of 2010, I took on the interim role. So it's been an interim role now since 2010. That's a long interim role. And so, my private and my public, they're very similar. They're very similar. I tend to try to keep the same culture in our home as we do in the office, which is a culture of calm, a culture of peace. It's hard in ministry to keep drama outside. Mm-hmm. It's hard to keep it away from. Church attracts crazy. It just does. That's the bottom line. But you really have to protect the environment in order to keep things to where you can see clearly where you're going and what needs to happen.
And that's one of the things I've noticed and appreciated about you. Doing the work that I do and meeting the people I've met, I've seen people who, sitting there in a suit, $1 million suit, and when nobody's around, they slouch, and the F-bomb starts coming out of their mouth, and they're talking, like we're in the back of the pickup drinking beer, and then somebody else walks into the room and they straighten up and they fix their tie, and their language, the vocabulary becomes, very expensive. And they may even, get a bit of an accent to their voice. And they completely change their public presentation when the world kind of looks at them. Mm-hmm. And so they're clearly, living two lives. They have two identities. They have their work identity, and then they have their personal identity. And those are the people who get mad when, they get a call after hours, and, or, they go to work and they come home and they're like, I can't be myself at work. And vice versa. If they try to be like they are at work and they bring that to the house, people aren't going to accept that. And
Sure.
so it's very, challenging. They in some ways they feel like they're an imposter, being at work, acting this way, doing these things. People think this about them, but then at home they're this way, and they know, that they're faking it. And so even in the clergy, I've seen, men struggle with that, my private self versus my public self. And one of the things that I've always appreciated about you is there is a blending of the two. That your role as a pastor, you've accepted that role, but you've accepted that role as Mike.
Mm-hmm.
And so Mike comes in the door and he happens to be the pastor. And then when we've been in public, there's Mike, but the pastor is right there, with him. So as we talk to people, I don't see a significant difference between you and I at lunch, or you and I in the concert, fist a flying.
Yep.
And you and I, when you're in the church or on the stage, there's a consistency between those two. And that suggests that you've blended these two identities, that Pastor Mike and Mike are one and the same. You're just seeing different sides of them as the light shines. And that's a challenge that a lot of people, haven't figured out. I opened it up by talking about the church folk who show up with their suits and their cologne and, hey brother, how are you today? It's a beautiful day, isn't it? And at home, they're not like that,
Yeah, I tell you, I give a lot of credit to the church. We have so little of that putting on airs. Man, we just, unless I'm just blind to it, we just got folks that are just, they're real. I mean, obviously we've got, I mean, even myself, I cuss a little bit more at home than I do at church. But it's not a struggle. It's not a struggle to walk in and feel like you have to act a certain way in order to belong.
Right.
And it takes a long time to develop that culture. And then you got to be really intentional about keeping it. And I think we just are. And it's in the presentation of the worship. It's in the way we greet at the front. It's just in if you look around, it's in the even in the expectation of, people don't feel like they got to get their Sunday best, put on. I think so often what happens is we can get to a point to where we feel like as long as I look put together on the outside, then they'll believe I'm put together on the inside. We know we're not. None of us are put together on the inside. So we're all working on it.
I may look like I got it all together, but right now my sock is down in my shoe.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap up with this. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Didn't know where this was going to go, so appreciate that.
Here's what I do know. I do know that every time you come up with something like this, I'm the one that ends up talking more, and you end up keeping your private.
I'll talk about it all day long, but you did such a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Maybe next time.
Yeah. All right.
But there's a movie called Overcomer. Not a lot of people seen it. It's a great Christian movie about a high school football coach, and he ends up his star player transfers out of town, and then the school budget cuts, and the whole football thing goes away, and you just see him cratering, losing his mind, angry, upset about the whole thing, and simultaneously he's visiting, as part of the church, he visits people at the hospital, and he stops by this guy's room, says, I'll pray for you, brother. And next week he's up there and the guy's still in the room, and he stops in to talk to him. And I don't know how the conversation got to this, but he asked him, he said, so who are you? And he says, well, I'm a football coach. And he says, and God forbid that be taken away from you. Who are you? Well, I'm a high school teacher. He was like, and if that were to be taken away from you, who are you? Well, I'm a husband. I'm a father. And God forbid that actually be taken away from you. Who are you? And he's getting frustrated with the black guy in the bed. And he says, well, I'm a white American male. And he says, that's obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But who are you? And he finally flounders about a bit and says, well, I'm a Christian. And he says, funny how far down the list that was.
Mm.
And he said, well, I could have said it first. And he says, yeah, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And he said, imagine what it would be like to get your identity from the one who created you, not what you do.
Yep.
And to me, that's what I see in how you live. You said it earlier on, is I'm an interim pastor, meaning you have accepted this role to serve as pastor of Grace Point Church as long as God wants you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you haven't taken the time, I'm the lead pastor, and tried to, build a kingdom around being in charge of the church. This is an interim role, and you are gracious and humble about where you serve and how long you serve. And if he were to take that away from you, that's fine. What's next?
Sure.
And so to me, you're an example of somebody who has done like this movie has suggested, which is first you get your identity from the one who created you. And then from there, everything else starts to fall into place.
Thank you, Doc.
Boom.
I still prefer, it is the number one thing that I have embraced, and I have welcomed this reality. It is not about me. It is not about me. It's about him.
Yes, sir.
Praise God. Thank you, Doc.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Pastor Mike.
Thanks for continuing to hang out with us and listen. If you are checking this out on YouTube, go out there and like and share. If you're on audio podcast, click like and
Follow.
continue to follow.
Share us with your friends.
Yes, sir.
In England. In Australia.
All over. You know, we haven't done
Cambodia.
that for a minute. Checked out where all they're popping up. We should do that. Maybe next week.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.